All right, folks, we're ready for our last talk. Let's give Chris a warm round of applause as he comes to the stage.
How you guys doing? Do you like to make money? That's what we're going to talk about today. I like to get paid. I'm in a startup. That doesn't always happen. I've been in monetization gaming for about 15 years, so today I want to talk a little bit about the lessons I've learned at some places. So who am I? Why should you listen to what I have to say? Like I said, gaming, I've been in the industry back when it was $60 games in a store shelf, big transition. So when I say gaming background, it's not mobile so much or recent, but I've seen that transition and why games have moved to in-game microtransactions. My first company was acquired by Second Life. I spent about 5 years at Second Life, working initially in biz dev, acquiring their marketplace for virtual goods, running that for a couple of years, eventually taking over their $500 million per year user-to-user economy, and Lindex Exchange, which ran about $150 million a year. So I spent a good couple of years digging into what users buy, what merchants want to see inside of a virtual space, what functionality they need. And now I run my own startup, and part of our goal is to be the backbone of commerce for the VR space as it develops, and really for digital transactions as a whole. So I'll get into that a little bit at the end, but Globit is a digital currency service, web service, and we provide in-app microtransactions. So first, always like to talk about it, monetization isn't evil. It feels like it's a four-letter word nowadays. I don't know if that's the case as much in VR with all of you as it is in gaming when I talk to game developers at conventions. But there are, oh, got some, there we go. Didn't realize I had animations there, my apologies. There are kind of two big things I'll mention. One is don't screw your customers. You're looking to monetize. Trust is a big factor. If you lose that, you don't get it back. I've seen it in the virtual world. I've seen companies change the value of currency in world. In gaming, a couple of examples I threw up there. If you sell something to someone, maintain that value of what you sell. Work with them if you need to change that. Try to make minor changes. So build trust with your user base. And then understand your users. Good monetization shouldn't just be about making money. It should be about improving your product, and you need to know your users to do that. Candy Crush is a game a lot of folks think about as making a lot of money, maybe not in the best ways, but it was introduced to me by women in their 40s who were ecstatic about being 250 levels in and not having to choose a level of difficulty, feeling like they accomplished that. So sometimes the way you charge your users can be something they appreciate and want more of, not something where they feel like they're paying for something that they shouldn't have to pay for. In Second Life, we built a web marketplace, or acquired one, and we charged 5% on transactions. Users could buy in world, and we had more and more users every month move to the marketplace to choose to buy in an area where we earned some money because we provided better functionality with the money we earned. I had virtual good merchants who told me they would pay 10 to 20% if they could get better transaction history functionality. So providing the right usage back, going out to talk to your users, just understanding psychologically who they are, you can build a better experience of monetization. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit because I've only got about 20 minutes and I probably brought way too many slides. Quickly, there's four main monetization methods I see: ads, purchase, subscription, and in-world purchases, in-app purchases. I like to think of how those scale, looking at user acquisition and looking at user engagement, user activity. And when you look at those side by side, there's a big difference. You might want to sell something to users up front, sell access, sell a subscription. My advice to you is to really look at in-world purchases. Virtual reality, virtual worlds are immersive environments. They really grab people, they really create user engagement that increases the hours people spend. You need something you monetize with in order to support your product that will scale with that usage, with potentially the servers that you need to run. You need to think about those costs, not only for what monetizes best for you, but what's best for your user base. In Second Life, I mentioned I'd pull some lessons from that. Our average active user was active for over 20 hours a month. That was incredible. Now, we didn't necessarily acquire a ton, but you saw that $500,000 a year in user-to-user transactions. That was 1 million active monthly users spending an incredible amount of time in world. One other way to deal with user engagement might be to build marketplaces. That doesn't mean you have to. Marketplace allowing one user to sell to another. If you do, one thing I implore you to consider is your marketplace balanced? More and more what I see in the world are marketplaces that lean toward benefiting the consumer, driving prices down. This is something we ran into at Second Life as well, where in some industries, merchants were making their living off of selling products, and folks would come in and drive prices down close to zero. So that doesn't mean you need to intentionally inflate prices, but how you do advertisement in a space, how you enable professionals versus hobbyists is vital to consider. In the digital goods space, there's no cost to reproduction. That means price in a marketplace that is unconstrained can head towards zero. And if you're building a product that is based, like Second Life was, on commerce, on a merchant class selling to a consumer class, you need to make sure they can still make a living. Some other basics, some of the big things I've seen, what I'd really think about if you're trying to make money. Number one, personalization. Over half of the money that we saw go from user to user in Second Life was for clothing, avatars, things that are about identity and brand. And hopefully that won't sound crazy to you. It does when I talk to game developers, and they ask, why would someone buy clothing? It's the same reason someone would spend $200 on designer jeans. People care about the image they portray. Virtual worlds are incredibly immersive. That brand identity for people, that personalization is that much more important in all of these virtual realities where folks are walking around with avatars. You don't need to think about gameplay, about other functionality. You can provide ancillary items, and you can make a serious living doing that. Like I said, $250 million a year in Second Life, if not more. That was when I left. That was probably 3 years ago. It's likely grown now. Emotional attachment is the other big thing I'll mention. Like I said, psychologically, what are your users looking for? A lot of folks forget to think about the emotional aspect. One of the most successful products I've seen in my time were Ozimil's bunnies, little bunnies that people could play with. Why would you spend your money on it? We talk about utility. Philip Rosedale was up here earlier, and I think that is vital to getting people into a space, but don't forget the emotional aspect. People love pets. Pets sell. Doesn't mean you need to build pets, but think about building that emotional attachment. Folks want to buy those things. They aren't necessarily things that they need. They certainly want to have them. That can keep people coming back to your product. This product, I believe at its peak, was making $250,000 inside of Second Life every month. And that wasn't just an emotional attachment. Razor blade model is something big to think about. If you are looking to monetize your user base or let your users monetize other users as merchants, sometimes it makes sense to give a component away, sell something inexpensively, get people coming back. With Ozimil's bunnies, the bunnies were very inexpensive. If you wanted to breed them, there was a whole game built in. The food could get rather expensive. You see this in card games all the time where there are starter decks given out. They get people into products. And then you sell something on top of that. So what does it take to get someone in and actively engaged? I do think most folks that I've seen in VR are looking at the freemium model. I think it's the right move. Get people in, get them amazed. Find what will hook them. Finally, economic lubricant as a digital currency. Something I recommend. It doesn't mean you have to have it. A lot of folks ask me why. Should I go with that versus USD prices? We tested that at Second Life. We put USD prices beside Linden dollar prices in the marketplace for virtual goods, and we saw a 20 to 30% decrease in sales when we priced in USD or we put a US dollar price beside a Linden dollar price. People think differently when they see something that they know as US dollars. They see it as more expensive. It doesn't matter how large the number is in your virtual or digital currency that you're using. Psychologically, people treat it more expensive when they see a currency they're used to having in their wallet. I'd recommend you use your own, you go with someone else, but you use a digital currency that you price all products in that. It has a number of other benefits, including if you're marketing to an international user base, you don't have one currency over another. You can offset payment processing fees. In-world currency solutions, like I said, you can look at building your own. You can choose not to go that way. We are a service provider, so I did want to mention that we provide that quickly. I won't spend too much time on this, but we provide a digital currency service. I'm happy to talk to anyone about it afterwards. We charge a small fee. Our goal is to be a backbone service provider, so we provide that as a platform. You can integrate it. We can provide user-to-user transactions. We can provide a fee that comes out of transactions that goes back to you, so a revenue stream built into our service for platforms that integrate it. And our goal is to get every virtual world, virtual reality product, digital product onto a single currency. As I said, there was talk earlier about connectivity being the key to utility. We believe in that. There's a lot of components folks need: identity, inventory, DNS was talked about earlier, server space. We believe currency is a big one, and we're trying to provide that. We're trying to focus on that so that other folks don't have to. So I'm happy to talk to anyone who'd like to afterwards. Here's some information as well if you want to reach out to me later. And if we have any time, I'm happy to take any questions from the audience. I know I ran through quickly. Questions? Anyone looking at monetizing?
So I'll ask a question, if that's all right.
Yes, please. Sorry.
No problem. So what's, I mean, you say you're targeting this at VR applications. Is there anything VR specific about this?
About what we're doing, Globit?
Yeah, about your currency.
Sure. Microtransactions, what I've seen are that folks looking to buy things, there tend to be a lot more smaller transactions over bigger ones. It's what we've seen in the gaming industry as well, that monetizes a lot better. So in terms of digital currency in general and what we're providing, we're getting users to buy in for a chunk of money. We're handling payments processing and offsetting payments processing fees and enabling microtransactions. We're allowing for in-world purchasing. So our system through OAuth lets a user authorize you, let's say, as a game provider, and then not have to leave your experience, which is a big one to purchase.
I get your functionality you're providing. What I'm asking is there any reason you wouldn't just provide this to like all games?
Oh, we're looking at games as well. It's a different space. There's a lot less user-to-user transactions in games. It is something we're approaching, and we've got some game developers as well. We do see the digital space as a whole as something we want to go after. VR is an interesting point because there is not a dominant currency player in the space. There are not a lot of restrictions. So if you go into gaming, right now, for instance, on mobile, there are restrictions in the mobile space on Apple, some on some Android marketplaces. VR is emerging, and a lot of folks are looking for a solution and not tied down to specific platforms. They're really building their own platform. So in VR, you're really dealing more with platform creators as opposed to app creators. Does that make sense?
Hey, Chris, I got a question on this side.
Yes.
So with these type of, I guess, rules that have come out or kind of from the data, this information that you've gathered, do you see it as being universally applied? So, for example, like with the first wave of VR consumers are probably going to be very hardcore gamers. PC guy, probably pretty skeptical of what's going on with the free-to-play mobile market, for example. And so, how do you approach that crowd when it comes to monetization, or is it just kind of the same principles in a slightly different package?
I'll say from Second Life, I don't believe it's that different. It was still a pretty niche market, so I think it was pretty hardcore. What we saw for users in Second Life were we churned a lot of folks out, and we had a lot of users that were around for 3 years plus and are probably still around as that active user base. So I think the lessons there are likely applicable to the early VR market. I do think we're in a different space. When Second Life started, you're right, mobile wasn't around. One of the reasons I start with monetization is not evil, is it really does, a lot of folks are skeptical. The fact of the matter is you need to earn some money, and if you approach your users right and approach them with a community mindset of, hey, we're not looking to fleece you. We are looking to earn enough money that we can provide the product you want. I actually believe in early adopter communities, they'll get behind that. As long as you don't screw them over, you don't pull the rug out from underneath them, and they feel like you're listening to them and providing the features that they want, that you're not taking advantage of that community. I think the tech community is very fond of that. You know, the keys there are how do you work it in? Are you really providing new functionality when you look to monetize that makes the experience better? Or are you cutting functionality from a free version that you're now trying to charge users for? That's a big thing I've seen where folks get wrong sometimes, is they try to take something they provided as free and then start charging for it. And I'll say that I've never seen work. I've always seen a user base basically be up in arms. Once you provide something for free, they expect that that's free. You need to let them know why you're charging for it. So with our virtual goods marketplace, I went out and spoke with the merchants at one point and said, I want to provide features. We need more money. Would you pay for this? It was interesting to me to have some users that were making 6 figures a month tell me they would pay 20% above what they were paying to get certain functionality because they felt they were losing that much money in efficiency because they didn't have those features. We wouldn't have charged that much. We still didn't end up building those. But that is something where, sure, the product was free. We could have done something as an opt-in. We're building new features. Maybe eventually they'll be free. They'll come down in price. So I do think it's applicable to this user base. I do think you need to be cautious because of the mindset, and that's why you need to be open and talk to your users. Bring them in, let them know what you're thinking of charging for, and let them have a voice.
Thank you. And we have almost run out of time, so we can take 2 questions, and then we're wrapping up. All right, thank you.
I'll stick around for anyone else for a few minutes, by the way.
Hi, I was wondering how you think about the acquisition of physical goods for like in-world purchases. So for example, there's your typical e-commerce experience where you can buy clothing and some stuff that Sixth Sense is doing. But then you also have the potentially printing my game avatar that I have customized with 3D printing or something along those lines. So I'd be curious just as to your thoughts around in-app purchases, but of physical goods that you'd have shipped to you.
Yep. So you'd be in a world, you would have something listed for sale in a world which you may transfer some digital representation, but it also goes to a purchase order where you ship a physical good to them. So.
Not necessarily even I'm purchasing something to enable me to go to the next level, but to commemorate I made it to level 50, and by the way, this is what my avatar looks like, and I purchased virtual clothes that make me look like this. So it doesn't even have to enable you to do that, but we've seen things with like Hero Forge creating different game characters with that. So I'd just be curious as to your thoughts about how the physical...
Yep. I'd love to see it head there. I think there's some additional risks that slow that down. So one is the largest benefits, some of the largest benefits of the digital currency right now are the decrease in cost for microtransactions. When you start getting to physical goods, it depends on what the price point is. You now need a shipping address. So you might need to go to some sort of form input or a standard purchase flow. As opposed to just carrying a balance or a wallet in a system and then being able to just check out with one click. So there's some hindrances there. It's not problematic. There might be a question as to do you get a benefit from doing it with a digital currency or not. For international, I think there's still a huge benefit, and in the long run, I think there will be to unifying around a currency. You do have some other fraud risks as well, which are the other large challenge. With a digital good, there are some corners you can got some cost savings. Because there's really no cost to the good that is shipped. If you start getting into shipping expensive goods, you need to make sure that whatever digital currency you're using, whatever service is processing that, has a level of fraud protection that is equivalent to a standard e-commerce site that sells physical goods and has not cut those corners. Otherwise, you might see yourself out in a space where they say, hey, we guarantee nothing. We let users charge stuff back and we just take the funds back. You're not out anything. And then you say, but wait, I sold a physical good. And they, you know, what did your terms of service say? What? So I think you need to think about the platform or work that in. I'd love to see more of that happen. I think we're still even at the cusp of digital currency for digital goods. I think physical goods will follow along after.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Can you please share some of your experiences with advertising as a monetization strategy within VR, and what has worked well and what hasn't?
Sure. So I mentioned price driving to zero in the Second Life marketplace, virtual goods marketplace. One of the big problems there was we really didn't have good marketing techniques, and our users were not very skilled necessarily with those. There were a lot of folks who hadn't traditionally been in merchandising and sales. They come in, they learn to create. They weren't marketers. And so you ended up with a hobbyist with something not very good next to a professional with something very good. As an end user, how do I know which is quality? Why should I spend 2,000 Linden dollars when I can spend 3 Linden dollars and get a pair of jeans? I find out later that they don't look good, that my legs come through them, that I can't resize them. So marketing is one of the ways that a brand gets out there and puts value, that folks that are producing good products get those in front of new users ahead of lower tier products. It's good for the platform as a whole. It's good for the professionals. Hobbyists can still, you know, come in for folks who are searching for things. So in that space, you know, we had a web marketplace and we were looking at standard in-channel marketing. You're in such and such tab, clothing, breedable animals, market those goods there. We were looking at things in-world. So what I think is more interesting in marketing is how do you market inside of a virtual space that is three-dimensional. One of the things that I think is interesting is with marketing are metrics. Folks put banners up. Do people really look at them when I pay for an ad? In a virtual world, you can detect where someone's view frustum is. So I believe that down the road, we'll get to where you can detect how long someone actually has an ad in their view, if they're focused on it and looking directly at it with some of these products versus it's off in the periphery. I think that can incentivize better ads. I think that can be a system where you get more for your money in marketing. We were earlier today, someone was talking about hyperlinks between spaces. I think you'll see some sort of three-dimensional representation of a hyperlink like you have in a web page, a portal. Some of those will be free, some of them will be sponsored. Folks will start to put those in spaces. They might jump to another space in the same virtual world. They might jump to a different virtual world. I think that'll be another way that virtual worlds start to market and we start to build that connectivity layer or highway. Just a couple of thoughts, but I think you'll see, I don't know if that answers your question or not, you'll see some of this, plenty of the standard mechanisms out there in marketing apply the same in VR. Especially if you have a marketplace where users sell to users. If you're a company selling to your users, you're talking about marketing in a different scale, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, is we have the bigger brands and how they potentially use, you know, VR environments to advertise in. What worked well, what didn't work well.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, we didn't, you know, at Second Life, I don't feel like we ever cracked the nut and got really deep into that. Folks bought spaces. What you shouldn't do is this. We did three things that I'll say didn't work, and I apologize, I think these are important lessons. We as a company, because we were so set on everything being user-created content, would have Coca-Cola come to us and we'd say, we don't do it, we'll put you in touch with a provider who builds spaces. Sometimes that was good, sometimes it wasn't. So we had a lot of big brands have bad experiences that we maybe should have hired a team internally, at least to manage that and bring someone in, manage expectations. Two, they'd build them a virtual world and then, or space. Why is someone coming here? All you just did was build something that's 3D modeled. What's the incentive? Like, people don't show up to, you know, a Coca-Cola store to look around at all the cool Coke products. I mentioned Coke because they were one of the folks who did this, who came in and got a lot of press and then disappeared. I think you need to talk to a major brand that wants to come into your world and actually think about, are they the right partner? Is your user base one that likes their product? Is there an experience you can build and brand around that that makes sense? And I think it needs to be an experience. And then should you be building that yourselves or outsourcing that? If they're just looking to market, I think there are things that you can do, but I think we need a service provider who needs to build some of that. So the same way that, you know, there's tools like Google Analytics and plenty of marketing tools to build advertisement on the web, I don't know of anyone who's doing that in VR, but I think it's way more powerful. Like I said, I joined Second Life in 2007. We never really got to focus on this, but I do believe you can do a much better job in VR at telling if someone is looking at an ad, interacting with it. No one's ever accidentally clicking on something in the virtual world, by the way, and going through. You know, engagement is a much clearer thing, and you can charge for that.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I apologize for anyone that I've kept too long, and I will stick around for a few minutes for anyone else who has questions.
That concludes the talks for this particular room. We have some things going on, I believe, in room 211 right across the hall this way. But as you head out, I want to personally, as a co-organizer and co-founder of SVVR, thank you so much for just participating in this event, for helping drive this industry forward and maintain that enthusiasm. I hope this was inspiring, that it was informative, and that it helps you as you move along your way and innovate and create and contribute to this era of face computing that we see before us. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, and have a pleasant week. See you later.